Who are you? Are you a Democrat, a Republican, American, Mexican, African, Asian, white, black, Latino? Are you gay, straight, non binary, male, female? Are you rich, poor, upper class? Are you a wife, a husband, a child, an adult? Are you old, young? What are you? Actually, you are none of those things. Anything that you can think of in any kind of identity that is placed on us, these are nothing but labels, they're words. We're none of that. In order to understand that we are nothing, that's how we get. I believe that's where we become enlightened in life. Because every one of those things, every one of those identities is not you, is a label that was picked for you. And there is something underneath all of that a lot of us have never even met. In order to really, really move forward, I think if we can uncover a little bit of that essence that we truly are before everything else, before every kind of label that the world gives and allows you to adopt for your identity, then we can start from a stronger grounding, a stronger footing to really propel ourselves in a direction. Because you see, a lot of people are locked into their identities. And these are small, tiny little illusions. None of these things were really chosen for us. We just picked them. We picked from the options that were put before us through society, through religion, teachers, parents, siblings, friends, peers, the media, the music that we choose. All of these things have been put as options. It's a limited option that we're given. And a lot of times we might think, oh, we have more control and we have free will to do whatever we want. But we can't really recognize how much free will we don't have when we're playing with a few cards on the table. We're not really playing with a full deck. I know that's kind of a weird analogy to use, but think of it like this. Like we're playing with maybe a handful of grains of sand. We could pick up a small handful of sand from the beach and dump it on the table and say, okay, here's what we have. This is all the sand that we have. But in actuality, you have the whole beach, and not even just the whole beach, but you have every single beach on the planet. And you just don't know it because all you've seen and all you've heard and all you've come in contact with was just these particular identities. And what I'm talking about here is it's so abstract that most people can't even look outside of the box that we're born into on this planet. In essence, in life, there's so many facades, right? And there's a lot of illusions when it comes to these things. Like I belong to this certain group and that's who I am. That's where my identity is. When it's all a big construct. It's a massive, massive construct. And it's not to say that all of it is bad. Actually, some of this is very necessary because if you look into Alexander Lowen, I believe it is, he talks about the social constructs. We use these social constructs to survive in the world. And that's why we feel like human beings feel safe within a herd. And you want to be part of some kind of group in order to navigate through this complex world that we live in. And it gives you some sort of identity. But the problem with that is certain identities serve you at certain points in your life. But if you carry them on into adulthood, into later years, it's habitual to carry these things into your later years when they are not necessary anymore, when they already served their purpose. And we see this happen the older people get all the time. So when it comes to political groups or your profession, the music that you listen to, the kind of movies you like, the typical clothes you wear, things like this. One small exercise that you can do is to ask yourself, if you were born in a different country or a different area from where you were born, would you be the same person? Would you have the same politics, would you like the same music? Would you wear the same kind of clothes? And the answer is no. You'd be a totally different person. And you don't even have to go far. I mean, you can look at your hometown that you grew up in and then say, okay, what if I grew up in New York City? What if I grew up in Beverly Hills in California? You would be a totally different person. And the same thing goes for people who grew up in Beverly Hills. If they imagine themselves growing up in a small town, they would be a totally different person. Now, they would have their same essence, but the identities that they would adapt to and the groups that they would fit into would be totally different. But the point that I'm getting at is this. If you go beneath all of those layers, all of those identities that were put before you, that you've chosen for yourself to navigate through this world, there is something really, really special underneath all of that. And that's your true essence. And, it's not till we get to we start to peel back all those layers that we can find our true selves. Because there's one thing that's always there watching it all happen. Underneath every belief system, every ideology, or every identity you've adopted, this one thing is always there. And most people go through their whole life never meeting that true original self, which is them and having knowledge of self. It's really bigger than any label that you adopt. And it's difficult to get to that place. And that's why I think meditation is probably the easiest and quickest way to get there. But it takes a lot of practice and soul searching, if you will, to uncover just a little piece of it. Because you don't need to fully go there. Maybe that's where we go when we die. We just don't know yet. But maybe sometimes in the dream realm we could have remnants of it, and oftentimes we don't remember all of our dreams, but I think we can get glimpses of this true original self that can really help us in this life right now, no matter what stage we're at currently. And I can give a small example of when I was out knocking on doors. I was learning how to knock on doors and sell, and I was shadowing somebody that was training me. And usually at the end of the day, they give you a couple of doors to knock, and then they watch your performance and they give you some advice and tell you what you did good and what you did wrong or what have you. And when we were walking back to the cars at night, he said, growing up, we had to have this tough exterior because it helped us to protect ourselves, in the schools or the communities that we grew up in. We didn't want to get picked on or bullied. We didn't want to get messed with. And this tough exterior really helped us. And he said, that was my problem. When I first started this job, I had to let go of that tough exterior. I didn't start doing good until I let go of that and I started to lighten up and be more friendly, more open to people. And that's where the change happened for me. And I said, wow, what he just did was really brilliant, because he told me exactly what I was doing without pointing the finger directly at me. So I always remember that, not only because he taught me how to, teach somebody else without pointing the finger and say, you're doing this, and put them on the defensive, but also it made me aware of the identity that I was holding on to, and I was using it in the wrong circumstance. It was a habitual thing to have this, and not that I was deliberately carrying this thing around and that I just didn't notice it. It's just little pieces of it will sneak through. And when you're talking to people, when you're doing sales face to face, micro expressions are a huge They are the biggest thing in that line of work, and you cannot let any of that old habit come through. So I started to improve immediately after that. I started smiling more at people, started being more jovial. I started to learn how to really connect with people instead of having this tough exterior, because the whole time you're on the defense thinking people are going to be aggressive towards you. And that was a big mess. So that's just a small example of what I'm talking about when you're carrying an old identity that you've adopted to survive in the world into a situation where it's not going to serve you anymore. And in fact, it's going to be to your own detriment. And we do this on so many levels in our lifetime right now, to where we shortcut ourselves and we hinder ourselves and we actually hurt ourselves because of our past identities. We do this. I see people do this all the time, including myself. I'm not like some perfect guru telling you from this pedestal. I'm telling you from experience what I've learned through life. I can also remember a time where I was doing music. I had a friend that he was a couple years older than me, but he'd sell studio time, and I always try to get a bargain on studio time. So I think I was trying to give him like a dime bag of weed or something like that to give me some free studio time or whatever. And I wanted to use this machine. It's called the Korg Triton. It was like $1,300 back then, so I couldn't afford it. And I'm like trying to like persuade him or convince him to give me the studio time. Let me do this. I got this really good idea for this beat, and I just won't stop. I'm relentlessly all the time just berating him, right? And he wanted me to. He was like an older mentor, right? But he wanted me to go to this culinary school in like a more wealthy area. And he goes, so I'm just berating him. Let me get the studio time. I have this really good idea. And he goes, did you look into that school, that culinary school? And I was like, nah, I didn't. Man. And he goes, I'm trying to teach you how to get your own Triton, kid. And right there, I realized, like, damn, he's looking out for me. So he must have read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and How to Appeal to Their Interest, which I think more people should read. But the point is this. I did not, I recognized it, and I was like, dude, he's right. I respect that. And I wanted to do it. Like, I really wanted to. But the reason why I still didn't go to the school was because my identity did not match somebody that would go over there, drive all the way over there, take a risk to see what it would be like if I went to that school, to see what kind of opportunities would come up from it. And I don't know, to this day, maybe if I would have went to that school, maybe some great opportunities, some great connections and friendships and networking would have came out of it. Maybe I would have went down that line in my life and found something really great. I wouldn't know right now because my identity back then didn't match that. I wasn't somebody who would go do that. I wouldn't go all the way over there and go to this really good culinary school. And even though I like to cook, it just wasn't something I was willing to do. And it was because of my identity. I wasn't the type of person to do that. So why am I gonna go do that? And that's what really held me back from even doing it. But there's a couple of lessons to learn in that as well. It's like how to win friends and influence people is one of the best ways to influence people. A lot of people try to influence others by saying you should do this and you should do that without appealing to the other person's interests. So what do you think that other person's going to do? They're not even going to listen to a word you say. They don't care. They only care about themselves. So in order for you to help them care about themselves more, if you want to persuade them in the right direction, you have to appeal to their interest. And that's a lesson that I took from even that. But also later on, I didn't recognize why it didn't work until many, many years later, is that my identity wasn't there. If I decided to adopt the identity of, you know what, I got to have more life experiences. I got to go to this town that's like an hour away. And I got to experience it, even if it's just for the experience, even if it doesn't bear any fruits. The experience alone is going to be something valuable. And you see, that was nowhere near my identity, didn't have any of that. Like, I didn't want to take a risk like that. I mean, the school was kind of expensive. I probably could have afforded it with a job or what have you, but it wasn't until years later that I recognized, you know what? Those things right there, like having those, doing things, meeting people that are in, that have the same interests, is so much more valuable than you can comprehend when it's all said and done. When you actually do things. And that's why I'm a big proponent to this day of going to things like, if you have a interest in acting, go to acting classes. If you're interested in cooking, go to culinary school. Join groups and meetups and do all kinds of things that's going to give you experiences. And this is the identity that I wish I would have adopted when I was a lot younger. So in essence, I was kind of stubborn and hard-headed in that regard. And that in itself is an identity. I'm stubborn, I'm hard-headed. You know, all these things are just fake constructs. It's not real. You're not really stubborn. You're not really hard-headed. And underneath all of that, you should really ask yourself, out of everything that I say about myself, how true is it really? And where did I get that belief? Where did I adopt that BS belief system? And what is underneath that? And then start from a better position to try to adopt a better identity, the most relevant identity that you can adopt right now in this current time.